Gentlemen, wow. I don't even know where to start. A great final if you're the Mexican national team, maybe a little bittersweet if you're the U.S. men's national team, a U.S. team that was, I don't want to say dominated, but at least in these statistics, possession, they were outdone in possession. Shots on goal as well, 16 shots, 8 on goal to U.S.'s 6 and 3. Almost twice the amount of passes, twice the amount of expected goals. I mean, Kasey, was it really this one-sided?
Well, it was one-sided, but it wasn't like a runaway, right? Because it wasn't like out of that possession and out of a lot of those shots that were from Mexico. It wasn't like Freese was flying all over the place, having to make saves, and so I think out of a lot of what Mexico had, it was just a lot of possession in midfield. But what it did was it really stopped the U.S. from attacking. Because we talked about it, while we were watching the match. How many times Diego Luna's drawn back, Tilman's drawn back. So then when there was a turnover, there was nobody there to really kind of switch the pitch and then pin Mexico in their own half. And so I think, yes, it was one-sided, but it wasn't one-sided from a standpoint that you're just reeling with pressure, but it really stopped the U.S. from being able to be maybe more productive in the offensive third.
Janusz, I have to be honest, from a U.S. men's national perspective, this started out better than anybody could expect. You're on the front foot, you win a free kick in a dangerous position, a great ball is whipped in by Sebastian Berhalter, and Chris Richards is one of your important men, best players in this tournament, gets a goal, and it's 1-0. You silence the crowd. Where did it go wrong for the U.S. men's national team?
Well, after the 3rd minute, right? Because that's when a mature team controls the game. I mean, that's the next level. We can say all we want. I mean, Mexico won this deservedly. I mean, they were much better, and you can't get past the statistics. I mean, 60-40 at times was 65-35, 16-6 shots, 12-0 corners, I think, if I remember. Yes, maybe they didn't create tons of clear-cut chances, but neither did the U.S. team after they scored that goal. Maybe one more, I think Freeman, but that was more of a mistake, long ball over the top.
Correct.
So you look at this, I never like to say, we scored too early, but remember we were talking during the game and said, we kind of did, because I had a feeling that this team is not ready. It's not at a level to now control the game. That's what it's going to take. Mauricio Pochettino had 40 days to work with this team, to mold this team, not the team that he wanted to have here for next year, because that's all that matters, right? Winning the Gold Cup would have been nice, in my opinion. Right. I think we've all done it, but I'm past the Concacaf stuff. Yeah. I'm looking at the next level. And what we found out today and throughout the tournament, what Mauricio Pochettino, what he found out is more who doesn't belong when I say who's not going to play a big part rather than the players that do. Because for me, Malik, Tilman, and Chris Richards are the only players that I can honestly say that deserve that.
I mentioned as a quick start, it's the earliest goal the U.S. has ever scored versus Mexico in 30 years. It was a 3rd-minute strike by Roy Wagerly in 1995. June 18th, 1995 was the last time they scored that early. Janusz is painting a picture as inexperienced players didn't know how to deal with this moment. I look at the Mexico side. Their roster, the starting 11, had 9 World Cup vets. Raul Jimenez is looking to play his 4th World Cup. Right. You go to the other side, you had Chris Richards. Well, I'm sorry, not even Chris Richards. You had Tim Ream, Tyler Adams, and Luca de la Torre. Yeah. And Luca didn't play last World Cup. Is it that simple?
It showed. That was a big part of it, because I think what we saw throughout this tournament was, even against poorer opposition, it was 60, 65 minutes, and then somehow teams got back into the match against Guatemala. I mean,
2-0 lead.
We talked about it the other day. 2-0 lead after 15 minutes against the 106th ranked country in the world. And after 15 minutes where you're 2-0, you've silenced the crowd, as you mentioned, again, you completely let the 106th ranked team control the match and pin you in. And in the end, you were so happy when the final whistle went. So when you mentioned, did they score too early? Because what we saw when they were in control of matches, they gave it back. They weren't able to see matches out in a professional way. And I knew Mexico was going to be the tougher task of all the matches they played against, and I wanted to see things. I didn't think with the squad we had you were just going to go, okay, go beat Mexico. But what I wanted to see was those little things. Can you control the game better in situations? And from 4 minutes onward, we kept saying, are they going deeper? Are they going deeper? There wasn't that time where we said, let's control a press. Let's get up, and let's pin them in their own half for a while. There was 5 minutes, 4 minutes, right at the end of the first half where you thought, okay, maybe they're not going to be afraid of this. And then the second half, it was all Mexico.
I know it's U.S. men's national team versus Mexico. It's El Clásico de Concacaf. It's the big, rivalry here in this region. But if I'm a U.S. men's national team fan, I'm not too upset at what they did this tournament. They punched above their weight for a lot of times.
With the players they had.
With the players they had. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Caveat,
but then there's a part of me saying, you had them right there. And why is it that the most experienced players aren't the players that are puffing out that chest and leading the charge? Tim Ream, who's been admirable with the U.S. men's national team and most likely will still be Chris Richards' partner come a year from now in the World Cup. In the Raul Jimenez equalizer, he goes at it and attacks it with his left foot instead of his right foot. Those are very simple, basic things defenders should know. Doesn't do it. We look at a player like Tyler Adams getting dragged out time and time again, and maybe that's the system, and maybe that's how Mexico overwhelmed them with their fullbacks. But am I naive to expect more from these experienced players? Where were these players today?
That was what I wanted to see in this tournament. And that's why I wanted to see that from, let's say, Johnny Cardoso. I wanted to see that from Tyler, who obviously had a long injury spells. He missed some of earlier in this camp because of the toe issue. But that's 2 matches in a row from who a lot of us or a lot of people were saying this, very easily could be the captain in the next World Cup. Semifinal and final had to come off at the end of the match. Not a Diego Luna or Diego came off as well. But but you're not looking at these kids. Okay, you got to pull them off, put somebody on. But to your point, I want to see the most experienced players in this squad rise to the forefront. And I don't think Tilman did that today, because I didn't think Luna did that today. Because I said, that's great. I'm all for a player taking his opportunity, getting the chance to go do it. But I need to see it against the more difficult opposition in those games. And can you be that player that's making a difference? Chris Richards, whole tournament was that guy, even today as well.
I want to get to Matt Freese with you in a second. But I want to ask you, you mentioned Malik Tilman, you mentioned Diego Luna, those players who clearly came out as winners in this Gold Cup. Clearly, people have seen a stock up with those players. Did they disappoint you tonight?
No, Tilman showed his qualities. And I think you see that, the level he plays in Europe and how he plays. I thought, I'm not saying he had a great game today, but you saw his strength, the ability to turn on players, the ability to attack space from time to time. He didn't do it often enough, but he was one of the few that actually you could say, okay, at the next level against bigger opposition, he
with
can.
Maybe some different people next to him as well.
With different people, he can, right? And others I didn't. Diego Luna, it was a big test today. He didn't pass that test, by the way. And please don't tell me that he had to help Arston and all of that, right? The U.S.-Mexico, the 2-0, this was good in our time, 10, 15, 20 years ago. We've won this thing, 7 times right now. Mexico won it 10 times. We know that we can do it. We didn't do it. My worry was more so with this team, everything that came before this game. Because at the very least, I would have taken a loss against Mexico in a good game. Very even game where Mexico wins it, but us dominating teams like Saudi Arabia, Haiti, Costa Rica, and Guatemala. We have to be able to dominate. When I say dominate, to control the game. It's up to us what happens in this game, whether we win or lose. But we really had them, right?
What I said,
and I didn't see that. And I didn't see that against Switzerland and Turkey. Well, by the way, we should be Switzerland and Turkey.
At home?
Their average, we should be at that level, right?
Come on. Not these players.
Well, by now,
that's
my point is that even with the full team, I don't know if we're there, right? I was in Qatar. I commentate Switzerland, who are a very, very good team, had a great tournament. Next thing you know, it's 6-1 against Portugal.
Right. So,
when Ronaldo controversially doesn't start and Gonzalo Ramos comes in and scores a hat-trick, right?
Yeah.
And Turkey, you saw them in quarterfinals against Holland in European Championship.
But what I said the other day was, this team will beat teams they're supposed to beat. They found a way to beat Guatemala. They're going to beat Trinidad.
When you say this team, are you referring to this Gold Cup team, or are you referring to the U.S. men's national team in general?
Well,
if the 8 players are here, do you feel the same? That they beat teams who they're supposed to beat, but they don't beat anybody else? Because I think that's a massive knock on the U.S. men's national team.
I would say that
your national team, really quickly, your national team punched above its weight continually.
But
Bob Bradley's the same. Jurgen Klinsmann's the same. When has this U.S. men's national team pool of players punched above their weight?
That's what we're waiting to see. Because, I know you don't play as many European oppositions as you used to because of Nations League and all that kind of stuff. But you haven't beat a European team in 4 years.
Yeah.
You went on a 6-game unbeaten streak against Mexico. Now you lose to Mexico. You lose to Panama. You lose to Canada. You lose to Canada again. And people say, okay, Canada's supposedly, their player pool right now, what they're doing, maybe the strongest team in Concacaf, they slip up, whatever. But you're still looking at a U.S. men's national team that you're not saying, hey, look, they can sneak a result against Argentina, against Germany or Belgium or somebody, and even in a friendly, and even if you say, oh, okay, the team they were playing against didn't take it that serious, but you still gave them that surprise.
I'd be remiss if I wouldn't ask you, 4-time World Cup veteran, played the position you know very well. What did you see from Matt Friis tonight, and maybe just in general throughout the tournament?
I mean, Matt was fine. Even in the match today, we were talking about a few different things, and he wasn't really tested. I mean, I'm not going to blame him for goals by any means. But there was little things, shot from distance that you gave up a corner that it was a comfortable shot from distance. You shouldn't be making those little issues that against different opposition in different moments just give you those little extras. And, I think Alexi said something in the broadcast, you don't take the penalties aside. It wasn't convincing. And I think that's kind of the way I looked at it. It's like, okay, he didn't look overawed. He didn't, he made the one huge mistake, but we've all made big mistakes. But it was everything else. I didn't see, look at those 2 or 3 saves. Look at those. I said, okay, he did what he probably should have done. He did a couple things he could have done better. There was some indecision. It just wasn't maybe what we've come to expect from the position.
Okay, so who has pole position right now? In that position with the U.S. men's national goalkeeper?
I think if
everybody's available,
if you had to play somebody right now, I still think you play Turner. I just don't think anybody else. I would have loved to have seen Zach Steffen be fit for this tournament and see if he could have.
If you're Matt Turner, why show up? Why not just go to Lyon?
Because I don't think Matt thought he wasn't going to play. I think I know he didn't have a good game against Switzerland, and fine, but what I would have loved to have seen is Matt just given that opportunity. But I also understand the idea of trying somebody else, but I don't know if Matt Friis was close enough to say, okay, you play the whole Gold Cup because I want to see if you're right there. And I think it just leaves more questions than answers, as Janusz said at the beginning with the majority of the guys in this Gold Cup.
Janusz, the defensive line was constantly under pressure, whether it was Mexico or the final minutes versus Guatemala or Costa Rica. What have you seen from this U.S. men's national team back line?
Well, I mean, I think the part of me thinks, of course, that there's going to be a different team when we see them in the World Cup.
It's going to be a significantly different team.
It's going to be a significantly team. My Warriors always.
I mean, these were your 2 center backs that you're probably going to have in the World Cup.
Yeah, but I think Anthony Robinson will make a difference, and if we see Serginho Dest come back to the form that we've seen, I think that that helps us as well, of course, and the protection of the back line could be different, of course, with Weston McKennie, whoever's going to get Tyler, and I think he's going to be benefit from that. Just the communication and know-how and knowing the players around. So that's going to be a change. My worry is with the goalkeepers, the good news is that everyone's in the game still. I mean,
Well, that's good for them. That's
it's
not good for
them.
us.
Yeah, it's not good for us because we continue to be a massive underdog going into these big tournaments. And any team, and we're not the only one, any team that's in that position at the very least has to have a decent goalkeeper, right? And we've seen that in our times with you, Tony, and Brad, and of course Tim Howard showed that against Belgium. So you have to have that. We don't. So that's a massive negative. But the biggest worry overall right now from this tournament here is that we are going to the World Cup next summer, and we're hosts of this tournament. And Mauricio Pochettino is going blind into that tournament. He's going absolutely blind.
Whose fault is that?
I don't think I'm going to put it on him. The fault.
I think some of it has to be on him, though.
Some of it, but not everything.
100%.
FIFA part of it because they created a tournament that shouldn't be here at this particular time, right? Where a lot of the players couldn't be here, not just for.
You're talking about the Club World Cup.
Yeah.
Club World Cup, of course. We had players that chose to have surgeries because they had to have it. We had players that chose not to play because to them, it wasn't that important, right? They just figure that they need rest. Leave it, think of it all of what you want. But as I said, 40 days. 40 days. I mean, that's a massive amount of time with the national team. That new coach, because this is not a coach that's been here for one cycle or two cycles. This is a brand new coach.
Well, he's been here for 10 months, Janusz. It's not,
but you know what I mean. I'm saying
I'm not saying
he reacted
for
pretty
10
quickly
how many,
with Mauricio Pochettino. He's got some blame. Why do you feel he's got some blame there?
Well, because
and how much blame?
What I haven't seen from Pochettino is a full commitment to the national team. I haven't seen a full commitment to the players. I haven't seen a full commitment to going and watching matches and truly being the guy to find out all those questions. Frank Leboeuf said on FC early on, he said, I think it's going to be a tough task for him because he doesn't know any of the U.S. players. So, fair enough.
That was my point.
He doesn't know them. So then you have to absolutely just dive in head first. And we haven't seen that. We've seen him doing a lot of other things, but we haven't seen him truly being represented. You hear players talking. Have you spoke with Pochettino? No, he's never called me. I've not talked to him. I don't know where I stand. I don't know. And to me, that's fine if you're a club coach. Because the club coach, if somebody in the end doesn't buy into what you're saying, you can just go buy somebody else. But as a national team coach, you only have what you have. If they've got a passport, great. And it's clearly we have 5 or 6 players that are at one level. We've got another 5 or 6 players that are kind of not quite to that level, but right around there. And then we've got a squad. Those 10, 12 players, as a national team manager, they have to be on board. They have to be 100% bought in. And it sure doesn't look that way from the outside.
I've been very critical of Mauricio Pochettino, his time spent and the optics of how he spends that time. You call him 15 Major League Soccer players out of a team with 26 spots, and I've not seen him in one stadium. I've not heard about the dual national recruitment.
The only thing I've heard is he's been to Atlanta because he was there with U.S. Soccer.
Right, Como U.S. Soccer.
But to your point, Herc, I heard friends in Seattle say, oh, they've been told they're going to come and they're going to meet and they're going to talk, and nobody showed up.
I think the optics matter here. And what I've seen from Mauricio Pochettino hasn't really left me overly impressed for a federation that spent $6 million a year. There was a benefactor who wrote out a check. We're going to get two benefactors. Wrote out a check. We're going to get one of the best not international managers, one of the best managers in the world right now. Where if Manchester United needed a coach, he'd probably be on that short list. And yet, I'm left wanting more against Guatemala. I'm thinking to myself, is he going to pull the trigger and make a sub here? This team looks absolutely.
Yeah. They're being ran.
Gassed.
They're being
ran all over the field.
Yeah.
And today, he does something we've not seen all tournament. He puts in Damian Downs in the 60th minute, takes out Luca De La Torre, and they go kind of a 2-man up top with Ajiman and Downs. Have you been impressed, Kasey, with what you've seen tactically under Mauricio Pochettino?
But it didn't change because if I go with 2 big boys up front, and I think Janusz makes a brilliant point. This isn't 3 days to prepare for a match like a lot of international matches are. This is at the end of a 40-day camp. So This is where you've had time to work out and say, hey, we got a couple big boys up front. We're down a goal. We haven't had a lot of possession. Let's go route one and see if we can win some second balls in the final third and win some free kicks. Downs came on, and we're still trying to play, and it just didn't look like it was like anything different except for just a different player on the pitch.
Janusz, the way the U.S. men's national team could have hurt Mexico in this game is the way that the U.S. men's national team has historically been able to hurt Mexico in games. Set pieces, transitions, you defend. It's everybody behind the ball. When are we going to see something different with the U.S. men's national? When are we supposed to see that next level?
Well, the problem I have with Pochettino is, he hasn't delivered on what he promised of what we know about him as a manager, right? I mean, he's talked about it, the high press, right? We watched the high press, dysfunctional, right? I mean, the players,
always a free man. Always a free man
15, 20
available.
minutes left. But, today was a game, and there were moments where you could do it. If you look at history, forget who the coach of the national team was. And I'm not going to talk necessarily about the spirit, but you know how to beat Mexico. They're uncomfortable when you get very physical with them. I didn't see that today. In fact, I saw it the opposite way. It was Mexico doing this to us. Every game against Mexico that I remember, the 2-0 in our times, the Columbus games, whatever it was, as you know, they like to play in the rhythm. This is the nation that likes the combination play. We've talked about it. They're not necessarily players that will take you one-on-one everywhere. They will do that in wide areas, which, by the way, they did effectively.
But it was almost like an inside-out wide area. It was like a player would get wide, then there'd be an inside overlap that somebody didn't track with, and then play the ball through.
But for Pochettino, who likes to kind of project himself as that, the Argentine, we know how they play. We were missing that, to stop the game a little bit. The little fouls here and there to stop that momentum. We didn't have it, and we didn't have control almost at any point of this game. I mean, there was a little, maybe 2 minutes in the second half we noticed. But, I mean, usually when we talk about 15 or 20 minutes of control, that's usually not good enough.
Right.
Today, there was zero control over the course of this game, right? I mean, Mexico controlled this game from start to finish. What we saw in the last 5 minutes.
Double-digit.
That was holding
that
on.
Desperation,
that was just
that desperation we saw in 5 minutes. This is something that we usually show for longer periods of time.
Okay, so Herc, I'll go back to your point where you said, absorb some pressure and hit on the counter. Okay, let's go through some people, some pace that the U.S. national team always had, from Kobe Jones to Ernie Stewart to Landon to Bees to Josie, and then obviously you'd have like a Brian McBride able to flick stuff on and do things.
Charlie Davies, Robbie Finley has made a World Cup because of that.
Just even guys that, like you said, if you could absorb some pressure, get them frustrated looking for that winning goal, and then go route one, little combo through. I mean, we're talking about Cesar Montes with a yellow card. Did you ever put him under enough pressure after that to see if you could do that? Alvarez got a yellow card. You didn't put him under enough pressure.